All right, everybody, here we are again. It is No Driving Gloves, the automotive podcast where, well, the gloves come off and we pretty much talk about whatever we want. And if you noticed the description of the show tonight, we kicked John out and we stole the keys to the show. So it's Dave and Derek tonight. And that means you guys are in for a little bit of a ride down, well, Antique Car Alley and everything old car, I think, because as you know, that's what Dave and I like. We like the pre-World War II stuff. Dave kind of likes the pre-mid-century stuff. I guess I do too. But we're gonna talk the old stuff tonight. Leave that new stuff for another show. So here we are, Dave, Derek. Dave, how the heck you doing this week, man?
I'm great. Hey, I got a new book in the mail. It's not a new book because it's composed of pictures from the 1930s, but it's
But
one
is
I've
it
been
is
wanting
it
to
a
see forever.
newly published book, or is it
No,
an old book
no.
new to you?
It is from 1991, so
Oh, all right.
it's a pre-internet book.
So
Uh,
seeing this is not, I mean, right now we are live and people can see video on over on the YouTube, but for the audio listeners, why don't you tell them what book it is?
oh yeah, it's the book is called When the Hot Rods Ran, May 15th, 1938, and it is about a meeting at Muroc Dry Lake. Actually, I'm sorry, the book is actually called Muroc, May 15th, 1938. So When the Hot Rods Ran is actually just a subtitle. It was written by a guy named William Carroll back in 1991. I don't know anything about William Carroll, but odds are good that he's somebody like Albert Drake, where he was one of these guys that was at least like a hanger-on.
Whoa, hanger on. What
the heck? Who are you?
Why do we have a third person in the show? Who is this?
Well, we always have a third person in the show, but we weren't supposed to.
I kicked John out.
You did not. John walked me through setting this up. You guys are full of it.
Wait a second. Who are you? Even a car person? What is this?
Prove yourself.
I don't know.
Friend.
You just have to find out.
What
honestly,
he does have now, Dave. He does have car pictures behind him. Well,
yeah.
At least one.
Well, that's I recognize that. That's a 1927 Ford Model T Roadster that somebody left the fenders off and put the wrong wheels on. That's
wrong.
Explain
wheels.
yourself, stranger.
What are you talking wrong wheels?
Those are not Ford wheels. They should be wooden spokes, or they should be good, solid, welded spoke wires. Not
if you're a farmer.
Those Hoke Buffalo. Excuse you, sir. I'm a fine suburban artisan.
And I grew up on farms.
I like my things the way Detroit mixed them, not your crazy accessories. You're probably some kind of scorcher.
And I like to modify my stuff.
Oh my god!
One of those hot.
How do we feel about that?
Do you know who you're talking to? Do you have any idea who I am?
I've seen you in the company of some famous faces, I think, in the past, and I think I saw that incorrectly restored Model T of yours in maybe a magazine put out by Rod and Custom about 25 years ago.
Incorrectly. We're gonna have to have words after the show, young man.
Wow.
I think it's got like dual carburetors on it, and I think it's backed up by about 6 different kinds of auxiliary drivetrain piece, like
12
and a War Ford, or a Chicago.
Speeds.
It's not even a proper War Ford. It's a
so basically you don't even really enjoy like driving it. You're just constantly shifting it like a semi driver. So basically you own a semi. Is that what you're telling us?
Essentially, yes. I could split every shift like 3 times. So
okay, well, see, now he can outdrive me, so I guess I have to accept him. What do you think, Derek?
I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll test his knowledge as we go.
All right. Fair enough.
People haven't figured it out. Should we tell people who this guy is?
Yeah, for those that are watching over on YouTube, and for those of you that will,
or with their ears entirely.
Yes, for those that are listening right now, or listening when this podcast goes out on all of the wherever you find your podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We are being joined tonight by none other than
cassette tapes on the
well-known. Yeah, exactly. well-known commentator on No Driving Gloves. He's not really known for anything else than his comments here on the show.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Clayton Pattison, also known as Mr. Model T in the comment sections, and in a couple circles, he's known as that, but not that anybody really cares. So, no, Clayton, welcome to the show. Glad you could join us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, as I already said, we're going to be talking old cars tonight. Clayton is another one of those great early automotive historians, and we have a lot of fun together. The three of us have known each other for some time.
Yes, we do. Yes, we have.
Strangely, in very weird circles, because at one point I don't think we all knew each other. And then
it's because none of us had ever taken off the cow heads.
Yes, yeah,
that's true. Well, I think each of us, we each knew of each other, and we're all friends with each other, but not all interconnected.
Yes.
So, you and David knew each other from years back, and I've known David for a number of years, and a couple of other friends and mutuals, and we're all connected, but 6 degrees of separation from each other.
Yeah, so, and you never know. Kevin Bacon might pop in tonight. It's 6 degrees of separation. So,
well, actually, I think
you never know.
I think I can get it down to about 3.
Yeah, Clayton. So tonight's topic is pre-war cars. You're good on those? You like those?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know enough to be dangerous.
The Marvel carburetor, right? It was like a little boy standing on the running board pouring gasoline out of a boot into your Buick.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. You like
that? I always thought it would be fun. I always thought it'd be fun to, remember the little boy, the radiator mascot accessory, the little boy peeing?
Yes. I've never been a big urine oriented.
I've never been a fan of that either.
Accessorizer.
How cool would it be to modify it up and make it look like the little boy's peeing into your intake manifold, and that's your carburetor?
I still think you'd have a little boy peeing on the front of your antique automobile, and it would be kind of a distraction from the otherwise.
It would be
raise a lot of questions that I'd rather not.
Plus, at a higher rate of speed, it's just going to fly into your windshield.
It's just going to blow. My methanol injection, no.
My eyes, they burn.
Listen, no, not into the wind. Not into the wind.
I want a speedster that's got a folded windshield that I never put up and 2 little Brooklyn screens. So if I'm not wearing goggles, I'm not really driving.
Exactly.
So you will get real tired of that real quick.
Okay. I don't plan to drive it far. It's
okay. So wait, Clayton. So you say that, and I'm now maybe Dave will. I'm going to justify that I would not get tired of that. And here's my reasoning. I work at Lane Motor Museum.
Okay.
I fairly regularly drive one of our propeller cars. That it's a tractor setup, as they would call an airplane, a puller prop. And, it has these very kind of Brooklyn-esque, very short, actually kind of almost miniature Duval style windshield on it. And, that's a prop in front of me pulling wind. And I've driven that thing for over an hour, and I don't get sick of it. So I'm going to say that I won't get sick of it. But that's
it's a thing where if for driving it for up to an hour, it wouldn't bother me. But if you were driving it, say 6 to 8 hours consistently for several days on a road trip, you'd get real burned out real quick.
Well, I mean,
I just assume after hour 3 you don't feel
right? Why are you getting the Stearman out when what you wanted was your jet in that situation?
Yeah. Well,
even when your face goes numb, it just doesn't matter anymore.
Well, it just turns into leather.
It's kind of well, after a while, once you're desensitized to it and you're used to it, sure. I mean, that was the one thing that I was really surprised at how much it will just beat the heck out of you is the wind and the sun on a road trip in a convertible. Because we drove the Roadster, the 27 Roadster, all the way to Bonneville. It was 2,200 miles round trip. And I couldn't put the top up because I had changed, I did a whole bunch of work on that car for the 11 months before we did that road trip. And that was the break-in trip, by the way. So it had 0 miles on it when we left. And we were working on it the night before we left. 3 hours of sleep, and then got on the highway. And I had put the steel seat riser back in so that I had a battery box and some clearance. Well, I put the seat up too high and I couldn't put the top up. So we had to drive it all the way there with no top. And, in 110-degree heat in, southern Idaho and Nevada, and the sun and the wind for 6-8 hours straight, it got real old real quick.
So I mean, it's a kind of a cool thing to talk about because, I think very few of us anymore get to experience that, right? And I mean, yes, we have modern automobiles that are convertibles, but they also have air conditioning. There's a lot more design and engineering that goes into those to make them comfortable and safe. But there's not a lot. I mean,
that's the comparison that exists is touring motorcycles.
I guess, there you go, motorcycles. But it's kind of cool to talk about because for some people they don't get to experience what it truly was like in the early days of the automobile, especially in some of the the actual roadsters and touring cars where you'd have the top down, the windshields did fold all the way down. You could have a complete open air experience. It was a much different time, and you don't really think about it. Driving around town, maybe just driving out to the country for a picnic, that wasn't that bad. But if you did take a road trip, you were really thinking about how you were going to configure your car at the time. I mean, side curtains, right? Are you going to put the side curtains on or are you not? And then what type of side curtains did your car have? In the case of my Peerless that I have that one day will be restored, I hope, that's got the plate glass side curtains. They're actually the solid side curtains that go in. They're not just the literal curtains.
What year is that Peerless, just for the record?
23, 24, Model 66.
So it's like it's a glass window.
Yes.
In a canvas or leatherette curtain with poles that fit into the door, right?
Yeah.
Or is it an actual solid? Because it doesn't. It's got a folding top on it. It's not a California top, right?
No. It is a California top. That is a non-removable, non-folding top on the Peerless. Yep. So it essentially turns into a sedan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where do the side curtains store? Do they store down inside the doors, or do they have a separate compartment under a seat or outside?
So there, in the back of the front seat, there's a compartment that opens up, and they would all stack in there, and that would get closed up.
And how stuffy do you think the car would be with a load of passengers on a rainy day with the side curtains up? I mean, would it be unbearable?
Well, it'd be the Amazon. Yeah.
The door side.
The Amazon.
Yeah, but the door side curtains, from what I can tell, the glass was split in half and it was sliding. It had a track that it slid. You could slide them open.
Oh, so you
could open the windshield, open the side curtain a little bit, and still get airflow through the car.
Yes, you could get it
at least as long as it was in motion.
Yep.
So we've seen, speaking of pre-war accessories and humid days, because it's that time of year. I've seen a lot of like Montgomery Ward's like accessory fans and stuff, like either in a cage or with rubber blades so they don't cut your finger off, from like late 30s into the 40s, and then they're pretty common 50s accessory. And then everybody's got defrost, so they go away except for school buses. When did those come out? Do you guys know? Was that something that was around as early as the 20s? I mean, certainly not Peerless 1923, but like maybe like 28, 29, end of the decade.
The best I can think is probably late 20s. So funny enough, I actually during my internship in the Model T garage at Henry Ford Museum, one of my multiple projects that summer was actually to restore one of those late 20s fans to go in the Model A school bus that drives around the village. So it would have a period appropriate fan for the driver to stay cool.
I've ridden.
As I recall, I believe it was kind of mid to late 20s that you started seeing some of those type of accessories.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and before
everybody
that,
had a starting battery on board, reliable charging. You could start to run electric accessories, essentially.
Yeah,
big generators. They were more, getting into, cigar lighters and more kind of creature comforts in the car. more than just you're lucky you have seats and a window.
Well, I will say, so the book Babbitt, which is like a famous commentary on like 1920s suburban life, it came out in 1920. And he has this big debate with himself about what kind of accessory he's going to buy for his car. And he does end up settling on a cigar lighter. So, I mean, given that must have been written tail into 1919, so that's early in that decade when at least cigar lighters were around. And I know, didn't Ford start out with an electric wiper in the Model A and then go to vacuum because they wanted less of a burden on the electric system? Do I remember?
I think so. Yes. I think
So
a couple of them were early ones. It beats the hand crank one in the T's.
The hand crank windshield. I've got a T touring car windshield sitting over here, and it's still got the hand crank sticking out.
My Roadster has one, and the Depot Hack has one, and they're useless.
Yeah, but I mean,
you can't keep up.
Well, it just doesn't.
Not like you're
smears it around.
Clayton, it's not like your hands were doing anything else. You weren't steering the car, working the spark advanced retard and the throttle with your hands. I mean, you
and
have
shifting
hands,
speeds and Ruxtels and
So I wonder, is there a clamp-on accessory T era windshield wiper motor? Or did
probably.
those cars have powered motors, or did they have hand cranks?
I think they were hand cranked too, maybe until up into 26, 27, but I'd have to consult down in my library. I have a book of, I can't recall who wrote it now. I'd have to go look, but it's a book. It's 2 volumes on just Model T accessories. Like they collected every single ad from every copy of Mechanics Illustrated, every, snake oily, carburetor related, shocks, spring mounts, brakes, every engine accessories, heads, carburetors, manifolds, you name it, heaters is in this book. And they're about that thick, and there's 2 volumes. They're quite rare. I think they've been out of print for probably 50 years. But I think it was a guy in the National Tea Club had written this book and compiled. He was the accessory king, and he had a 19 or a 20 Touring that was fully accessorized with like one of everything that you could squeeze on a T, from like the radiator bars to front bumpers to custom horns to spotlights to chrome this and overdrives, and it almost looked like a clown car.
I bet.
But it was fully accessorized, and he was the authority on T accessories, so it wouldn't surprise me.
So the only Model T accessory that matters to me is the jeweled cover for your dash light. You just got to have that little pop of color,
I love that accessory. I had one briefly.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to go in the Model S, I think.
Cool.
Oh, nice. I like it.
The 08.
Yeah.
I had
we got to get together outside of the show about that Model S too, because you got to connect.
Yes.
You know who? So.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
They're working with Lord Voldemort, people.
Exactly.
We didn't know this, but he's into pre-model Fords.
Yes.
But it is keeping him from trying to take over the world a third time.
So I actually want to go back to something with you guys, because with you two here, of course, I think everybody knows I'm kind of the purist of the show. I really like original cars. I like, preservation of originality, things like that.
Well, so do I.
Well, yeah, you do, but and I mean, I get
like the Javelin in the dark arts.
Yeah, I mean, I get like, I've got my Hupmobile Speedster. I've got some of the goofy, race, the Brooklands Racer, the Austin 7 now.
Oh yeah, of course.
But when we all first started to realize we knew each other, I was much, much more into the deep history of originality and all that. And I really hadn't got a lot into the different terminology of, say, like gow jobs and jalopies and all the different slang terms out there. And I think that would be a cool conversation to have, especially with Clayton here, but Dave, who's got some background in it, and I only know a little bit about it, because there's a lot of history behind those things, and I think this is a good group to talk about. And Clayton kind of owns one of the cars that have some of that story with it. There's some connection there. So Clayton, I don't know if you want to kind of like, because we've already kind of mentioned Gow Job, and we've thrown some of these names out, and I don't know if everybody knows what they are.
That's true.
And it's kind of a muddy subject, right?
It is, and David and I talked about this, many years ago on the ham, the hokey ass.
We kind of inadvertently codified some of this for the internet. Gosh, 15 years ago?
Oh,
with a ham post, just with our opinions on it, and the era definitions. I think largely stuck for a lot of people. There's a few guys I think that don't agree, but it's
we don't care about them.
Well, if we did, we'd change our opinion, right?
Yeah, right.
We respect their right to disagree and probably don't interact with them.
What do they know?
I don't know.
The internet doesn't know anything.
Why wouldn't they listen to a bunch of guys in their 20s talking about cars from 90 years before?
Who weren't alive, right? Yeah. Well, like the term that obviously to start off with is, speedster is obviously pretty obvious. We know what a speedster is. Those were pretty much in the era. I think you and I hashed this out, David, years ago, that was kind of the period, before 1925. So after about 1925, those things start to go away, and there's more complete bodies, whether they're fairground racers, and then people start using the original factory coachwork and bodies, and that's where. But also,
coachwork is a stretch when we're talking about Model Ts. But yeah, the 23 and a half on body is a lot more substantial.
There's nothing coach or work about them.
Well, somebody had to do the work, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but
yeah.
Much the same as somebody siding a barn with nails and a galvanized sheet metal, basically.
No, because we automated it down into several small tasks that any idiot can do. You don't have to be able to climb a ladder and wield a hammer.
Yeah, right.
You know about the Ford industry. Gow jobs are cool. I'm sorry, my last parenthetical for the moment. Gow jobs are cool because they take something mass-produced like the T, and everybody accessorized them at the time because they were a blank slate and they didn't come with the things people necessarily wanted them. And the Gow job's the ultimate expression of that to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Yes. And speedster's kind of a freighted word, but I think we agree here. We're talking about like a Model T speedster or something of that era and ilk.
Yeah.
Not a Porsche speedster or an Auburn speedster, which are labeled similarly, but have very different kind of connotations to them.
Well, and I think Gow job. So the term, the like we said, the terminology is a little muddy. Is I think the most commonly accepted definition for the term Gow job has to do. It's a slang term. Gowing or gow would be a slang term for doping or drugging racehorses.
I object to this, but continue.
Well, and I'll let you jump in because I've heard other people bring this in, and I know you disagree.
That's my least favorite speculation as to where gow comes from, and I think it's because people later on. So when you're looking at this period in automotive history, you have to filter out so much of 50s, 60s, 70s hot rod and muscle car culture because it's infected. Like you see big and littles on cars that otherwise look perfectly out of the 30s, and you're like, didn't happen, friend. Look at the photographs. People ran 4 tires the same size. Yeah. And so this obsession with, like doping the fuel and gowing racehorses up. I mean, it's a stretch. They're trying to grab for hard-boiled fiction with one fist, Dashiell Hammett, drugged racehorses, this kind of thing. And they're trying to grab for nitromethane with the other. And that stuff comes out of World War II. And they didn't think the early stuff sounded exotic enough. But so my opinion, and I've put this in print and I stand by it, is that Gow is Okie relocated to California saying go. That's my Gow job, because people don't talk about it much today, but virtually everybody that lived in California prior to World War II, but wasn't born there in the teens, came there as, poor migrants fleeing their foreclosed farms in the Dust Bowl. And they didn't talk like modern Californians, man. They talked like people from the South. And that meshed with the original California accent, which if you listen to movies from that time period is a lot more Western and twangy because they were cowboys. So that's where people didn't understand, I think, by the time Gow Job made a revival, that it came out of the now extinct sort of Okie, California Dust Bowl accent that a lot of these guys, I mean, you read these histories of the Dry Lakes and stuff, and by the 30s, a lot of these guys had been born in what, Kansas or Oklahoma or Nebraska, places that had gone bust early. I mean, farming was hard even in the 20s and had gone bust and moved west and ended up with enough money, probably from working on cars and garages instead of trying to farm, that they could now go racing. But so anyway,
I want to throw
my take on it is,
I want to throw. There's three of us, so why not throw in a third? And again, I am not a historian.
taking too long. No, I'm just kidding.
This ilk of hot rodding, whatever you want to call it. But I had also read a theory, and I've heard both of these from you guys and other places. But I'd also read and heard in some circles the theory that GOW simply stood for gas, oil, and water, GOW. Which is what the vehicle took. Yeah, the acronym.
Acronym, as in they made it up to fit after the fact. Backronym.
What did you say?
Back with a B.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
They made it up after the fact.
And that's what I was going to ask
like
you.
PTO, gas, tires, and oil.
Yeah, is that a kind of a later, like going back and saying, oh, that's.
I hate to say it, but it's. Yeah, that history's been boomerized. Those guys who were into cars in the 60s and 70s got interested in early stuff and applied their life filter on it. And so like that GTO thing, that's a 60s ism that's been backwardly imposed on the 20s. I like it. It's cool, but I don't believe it for a minute as being the origin of GOW. But we know it was commonplace up until at least the post-war era, because supposedly when Pete Peterson went to Robert Stack, the actor who was a big-time hot rodder back then, said, I'm going to start a magazine called Hot Rod. He was like, what's a hot rod? Call it Gow Job. Everybody will know what that means. So we know it was that widespread in Southern California as a term. Now, the way Clayton and I defined it, GOWs were actually extinct by 1947 when they had that conversation. But that's kind of irrelevant to the hierarchy we set up that starts with, rebodied Fords or stripped Fords as speedsters, and then shades into GOWs about the time T's get pretty and are worth accessorizing as a speed car from the factory. And then once they start to go away, the culture changes again, doesn't it, Clayton?
Yeah, that's about right. So sometime in the mid, the traditional like speedster chassis Gow Job, like my Roadster and a few others, and like Multi Aldrich's T, and the few that I know that, yeah. Don't get me started.
I just saw it a couple weeks ago. It's brown.
Yeah, it's root beer brown.
It's so weird when because if you're used to seeing that one picture, that one Dean Batchelor picture taken at the Salt Flats in '52, it's black and white. So you're like, of course this is a Model T. It's black, but it's brown. You see it up close, and you're like, it's brown, but it works. It looks like red oxide primer, but it's not. It's smooth and shiny, so it's definitely just brown.
Is it metallic, or is it
no?
Just
at least
straight
not that
brown?
I've seen. A couple times I've seen it at Lang's. No, it's just straight brown paint. I mean, maybe it is red oxide primer and they polished it and waxed it or something, but it looks like brown Rust-Oleum.
Model T is it? Whose Model T is it?
The guy's name was Multi with a Y, Aldrich. His first name was actually Roy, Aldrich. And he built this car possibly as early as 32, starting with a 13, but it doesn't look anything like a 13 Ford anymore.
Well, I want to say that I thought it was a truck frame that it was a TT frame rails that he'd shortened. Or is
I've
that
never
another
heard that version of it.
Or is that another?
I think that's a different car. Yeah. The story so I have a buddy here.
Bullock's. I think it's Bullock's car. Noel Bullock's car
Bullock's car started with a TT.
I think it was. I think it was chopped down and shortened
because he wanted something stiffer. But Noel Bullock is the guy that won Pikes Peak with a Model T Ford in 1921. He's
22. 22.
okay. Is 21 when the
Yeah.
Lexington won?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, that's an awesome car too.
Yeah.
But,
So Roy built that car in probably 31 or 32. And he got his nickname of Multi because he loved the multi-lift heads and multi-lift lifters. They made a matching head and a lifter set that he favored and ran, and that's how he got his nickname. Was a Riley? No,
I think
who
it was
made the
Riley
multi-lift
Multilifts.
head?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It was Riley. Okay. See, sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other, and you forget more than you learn. And
Mhm.
Well, I mean, we've only been doing this for 25 years. What's your problem? This isn't all just fresh in your brain.
Right. Hey, we're getting old.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. So he drove that thing. He ran it with I think he had like 21-inch Hulk or Buffaloes on it, or Dayton's, and ran it at Muroc and El Mirage and all the early Dry Lakes meets in the early 30s, the unsanctioned runs. So before, I think the first sanctioned runs were in 37 or 38, I think.
Well, that's murky because you have, I think, some sanctioned speed events under like Gilmore Gasoline, even as early as maybe like 27. But as far as like the Muroc Racing Association and then later SCTA, that you're right. That's, I think 31's the first Muroc Racing.
Yeah, before. Well, when was the SCTA was founded in what,
38?
38?
No, 38. It's pretty late
I
because
think
there were like 2 or 3 predecessor organizations to SCTA where people all said, this is a great idea, we're going to do it. And then it didn't last beyond 2 weeks.
They merged them into the SCTA in 38.
Okay.
Because there was the Rosetta Timing Association. There was one, I think, for Rosemont, one for Muroc, and I think they started running as early as 34, 35.
Wasn't Rosetta the people that let you run coupes? I thought they stayed independent from SCTA until after the war.
I think you're right. As a matter of fact, I think you're right.
Yeah, I haven't stuck with a lot of that stuff because I have kind of doubled down on my interest in cars to the exclusion of racing. But I do remember some of that. Anybody that wants to really get into the weeds on the early days of Muroc, needs to read the Dean Batchelor book and the Robert Gannett book. And I can't remember.
And Don Montgomery's works too.
I think Montgomery is good, but I don't think he's necessary as a primer. If you really want to get into there's 3 or 4 volumes of Montgomery. You should probably get the Al Drake books. You probably should get this William Carroll Muroc book I just bought here. So Muroc, we should probably mention, is where Edwards Air Force Base is today, where they land the space shuttles occasionally and where they've tested a lot of top secret, not quite Area 51 level air technology, but it was taken over by the military in 1942 from the hot rodders at Bayonet Point. And they changed the name of the lake and everything, but it was originally Muroc, Muroc, which is the family name, Coram spelled backwards and with one letter change so that they could get their own post office back in like 1902 or something. And it's in a really desolate area, I think northeast of Los Angeles, the desert, where there's nothing but like alkali flats, but there's all these big basins that occasionally fill with water, but are really just mostly dry, hard packed mud part of the time. And until it got easier to get to the Bonneville Salt Flats from there, it was the best place to go flat out west of the Mississippi, near the population centers. So,
and I think the same thing happened to El Mirage too. Like the military took over El Mirage as well, but they do open it up like twice a year.
No, El Mirage isn't. They still race at El Mirage yearly, but they've only reopened what used to be Rogers and later was Muroc, and it's now Edwards like once for a reunion in the 90s or something, or maybe twice. But that one stays sealed up pretty tight for security reasons. But no, if they took El Mirage, they gave it back. But I don't recall them taking El Mirage or Bicycle or Rosamond or any of those smaller lakes. But the wartime history of Muroc is really cool too. They had a huge wooden mock-up of a Japanese, I think, cruiser out in the desert so they could do practice bombing runs on it and stuff. And there's still a big aerial compass rose, so you could orient yourself over the lake after you took off. on the lake bed there. So a lot of really cool history there. But yeah, so they started racing there, I think, as hot rodders, sort of trying to freelance it, not running for a gas station trophy in about 31. And meets happened sporadically there all through the early 30s. But they didn't really get it together and start running regular meets till 38. And then, like I said, those were pretty much done because there was actually a racing ban during World War II by 42. But there's a couple significant steps in car evolution that happened even before the war, because the car of 1942 is dramatically different from the car of 1932 at Muroc.
Yes, that's true. So I think Roy, so kind of to just get back on what we were talking about, that Roy spent a lot of time running at a lot of those early dry lakes like Rosemont and Muroc, and then made the switch all driving his T, and got really well known for it. It was very famous for that car, and then took it to, when they started running at Bonneville in 49, he and his wife were the kind of the welcome trailer. So when you went to Bonneville and you registered, they were the registrant couple. They had a little teardrop trailer that they camped out there on the salt and handled all the SCTA registrations and people checking in.
Now, did she pull the trailer in a separate car? Because I can't feature that T pulling a trailer.
No, I think they probably pulled it with a bigger wagon, but he drove the T there.
He must
drive the T. And this is in 49 to, I think he drove it out to the salt is in the well into the 1960s, and then stopped.
When did he die?
He died in the early 80s.
Wow.
He died in 80. I want to say it was 81 or 82, and still had the T at that time. It was still in his shop in California at that point.
Of course.
And
he would have been like maybe our grandparents' age, right? Like when was he born?
Yeah.
Like somewhere in the 1910s?
Probably, yeah, I think so. He's had to have been in his late teens or early 20s when he built the car originally in, 31 or 32. So you can kind of backtrack from there. So, but he had it, owned it all the way up until his death in the 80s, the early 80s, and then it disappeared. And showed up in 2008 at the Pomona swap meet.
That sounds right. I remember seeing the pictures.
The body was on the same chassis, but all the axles had been swapped out. It had wood spoke wheels on it, but the body was intact with the windshield, his dashboard. There you go.
That's the car in question. If people are watching,
that was in 1952.
Yeah. Actually, if you Google its license plate number, 1R9, is that a 2? 1R92561. That picture comes up pretty readily, or used to, through Google Pictures. But this car is so cool because it's not just a lowered Model T. I mean, the front axle is actually kicked out in front of the frame, the spring and everything, which lowers the car. What is that, 8-10 inches?
It's at least 9 inches. Yeah, it's about the same as my car.
It's huge, and it makes it look jaunty. And Dean Batchelor, who was editor of Rod and Custom at one time, and he was a famous Ferrari enthusiast, but he took this picture on the Salt Flats in 1952, and it's just glorified this car for everybody that's seen this book that he wrote and likes Model Ts. So yeah, and it drove Clayton to such madness that he built a 1927 kind of version of the car.
Yeah, this was one of the main inspirations for my Roadster. Was Maltese car, Robert Hodges touring, and one other that was a pretty famous rod, but this was the main inspiration for my Roadster.
Did you look at Gabby Garrison's car at all, or was that
yes, I did. Yes, that was also on my radar. Yes.
Yeah, my favorite feature on Gabby's car. So Gabby Garrison was another one of these guys, but he didn't keep his car that he built in the 30s. He recreated it in the 70s, and that car still exists and is with a guy in Pennsylvania, and it was actually on the cover of the magazine that I worked for. And it's really cool because it's got this hinged windshield. So Model Ts prior to 1923 and a half had a windshield that folded in half, basically forward, and you could kind of tilt it back rakishly to guide the air over your top. And gow job guys would splice these into the later posts so they get the modern looking, so to speak, square topped windshield, but they'd be able to put the angle on it or even fold it flat. And Gabby did just that. He'd fold it flat sometimes and drive around, and sometimes he'd have it raked back. And I just thought that looked amazingly cool.
Well, I think his original car, Garrison's original car, was crushed or destroyed in an earthquake in San Francisco or LA in 1933.
It was the Long Beach earthquake of 1933. Polly High collapsed on it. And because Polly High was a good. Oh, Derek found us a picture of your car, Clayton. So this is that incorrectly restored car that's on the wall behind Clayton. And,
yeah, that's actually at Bonneville.
Yes, in this
photograph. Is that what all that white is? I thought you were in the high mountains of the Rock.
He was doing the Tony Montana.
Yeah, snorting that stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Say hello to my Tin Lizzie.
Well, if you go far enough kind of off the beaten path, it is like snow. But if it gets flung in your eye, it burns.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to.
Are we talking about salt or?
Yes,
we're talking about salt.
Oh, okay.
It's not that kind of show.
All right.
Rocky Mountain High.
But Clayton definitely, he nailed the spirit of the times.
That was the goal.
Jason wanted to ask if that is the car behind Clayton on the wall, and that is exactly, yes, the same car. But the picture on the wall behind Clayton is a great photo shoot he did with his kids and his lovely wife and the tea, and they're all dressed in kind of period clothing. I think Clayton's got a straw boater on.
Not in that photograph.
Well, I've seen other photos, but yeah. So, and Clayton built this car basically twice with his bare hands and a little help from his friends.
Yeah.
So I kind of worship the ground he walks on because all I do is barely keep my Corvair running.
Oh, you do a great job. Poo.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Don't poo-poo your own skills for sure. I mean, and I have to say that the first time when I built that car, I bought it in 06 as pretty much just a hulk it was a frame and a body, and I think I had axles, and that was about it. It took me 3 years to put it together, because I never built a T before. I never built an early car before, and saw pictures of Roy's car and the Hodge Touring, which really set me off too, in the Rodders Journal, and put that thing together and learned a lot. Messed up, had some good success with a few things, had some issues with a few things, learned a lot, screwed up a lot. And then when we were going to do this Bonneville trip, so in 2010, 11-ish, we were a very dear friend of mine, is like a brother, buddy Chris. He and I wanted to drive to Bonneville, wanted to go to Speed Week. And in 2012 would have been the 60th anniversary of my grandfather going when he was like 20 in 52.
The same year that the Alders picture was taken.
Exactly. So we were going to recreate his trip, take the same highway and go the same route. We were going to do it in RTs, him and his Speedster that we built for his dad, and then my Roadster. So I thought, well, I got to do bearings in the motor because they're like 90 years old, and I don't trust them. I've already kicked a rod.
Fun fact that my buddies have noticed around here is that Model A engines are almost always shot, but Model T engines usually are not. And we've got some theories as to why that is, but yeah, it's amazing how many T's are still running around out there on their original 90-year-old bearings and doing fine, but perhaps not for driving to Bonneville 6 hours away.
No, and I'd already lost a rod or two in it, and I was skeptical of the mains. I actually kicked a main cap loose, and it was sitting in the bottom of the pan, and drove it all the way to a car meet with two main bearings in it, a front and a rear. Well, when it went, I heard it, and I thought, well, that was weird because it sounded like somebody chucking a large crescent wrench out of the car onto the road. like you left it on the bumper to hit the road. That's what it sounded like. And
so you looked in the rearview mirror, and when there was nothing in the road behind you, you just kept going, eh?
Just
I was
keep
like,
going.
what the hell? I was like, what the hell was that? And my dad was in the car with me, and we kept going. It ran great. Drove it all the way down there for some show. Spent it all weekend. Drove it all the way home, and then I was changing the oil. It was when I kicked the rod, which was unrelated, and I dropped the pan to change the rod, and there's the main cap sitting in the bottom of the pan, and there's nothing in the middle of it. Oh boy, that's what that noise was. Put it back together, drove it for another 2 years like that, though. So
that's the strength of a T. America went to the poorhouse in an automobile, and a lot of it was
Yes, they
because T's and A's could take it. And
Yes,
I
they
think the
could.
Great Depression was shouldered mostly by the A, but there were still plenty of T's running around.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
Derek has shared
got
up
a-
his. Can I
yeah,
show
so
this picture?
queued up another one because I want to go back to our conversation because this kicked off. So we've talked a lot about what a kind of a gow job is here, and it's muddy waters on what exactly it needs. But if we back up a little bit to the Speedster era, this is what I kind of think we define as the prototypical Speedster of the time. This isn't a Model T. This is my Pupmobile. But this uses pretty much the original car and just strips it bare of the extra weight. And it's the standard engine. It's you just basically lighten it up and make a few changes here and there, and you go out and have fun with it. That's kind of the so I kind of want to give a comparison here of what became what kind of the gow job was, and then we mentioned speedsters earlier. So this is that earlier idea of a speedster in that form.
All right, but you've got to also Google us up like a Mercury-bodied speedster, so people can see just how far that era went.
Well, true, because this is like a homemade
like this. You could basically build a little Indy car and drive it around out of Ford parts, and people did. I mean, and they looked really cool. I mean, also to be fair, dealers did. I mean, if you had a bunch of trade-in Fords, especially if they were the unstylish early ones, and you wanted to resell them, putting a couple speedster bodies on them, even if they were otherwise stock, made people went, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. And honey, it's so cheap. We could get it. Because the 20s were just as much a consumer society as the 50s. We've just forgotten because a lot of those relics are gone now. And there isn't, reruns on TV land of 20 sitcoms because they were silent Harold Lloyd films and they've become subjects of special interest.
Well,
but
we have to remember too, places like Ames body, which did those bodies as well. Those Ames would also body a Model T chassis for you. You could either buy the have it shipped to you, or you could have Ames get a Model T chassis, basically a drive-off chassis, and they would body that for you at their factory and send it to you.
Right. And later in the decade, I mean, and I don't mean much later, like say 1925, when you got outfits like Sterling Garage is the one we know by name. So it gets name checked a lot because there's actually a fairly famous couple of photographs of one of their cars floating around. But they were lowering T Roadsters. They were fitting aftermarket speedheads. And these were brand new cars. These were like the Saleen Mustangs kind of their day, or the Shelbys or whatever, where, yeah, we started with a T, but this is now a dedicated sports car and not just a cheap roadster. Okay, Derek found us a period ad of Mercury Speedster bodies.
Yeah.
So they actually made them for Chevy chassis as well. So if you had a 490 or a Superior chassis around, you could make yourself and the Mercury is it's a beautiful body. I mean, it looks like a 20s Bentley boat tail or something.
Yeah. They're a very sophisticated body, and they really changed the styling and the lines a lot. When you look at them up close, there's a few. There's one in particular I think was a Harris car. And I know it's changed hands a few times. That was on the cover of the Model T Speed Secrets book, the gray one with the red buffalo wire wheels and the side pipes, and that's just fully decked out.
Oh, the Murray Feinstock book. I know the car you're talking about.
That car is
a little Baroque for me, but yeah. What'd you say?
I said that car's a gorgeous example of one of these Mercury bodies.
It's finished to the absolute nth degree. And so there's definitely a range both in the Speedster era and of the Gow Job era of like how done these things are. I mean, some of these cars running at Muroc are just slapped together kind of from parts as dedicated race cars, but a lot of them are people's daily drivers that they just want to see how fast they'll go. And they take it out there and they strip the fenders and the windshield off of them, but they're street driven modified cars in the early 30s, in the worst years of the Great Depression. And I think that's another thing that kind of makes these extra cool is that, I mean, you had to really be, this isn't 1946 where you've got a bunch of discharge cash burning a hole in your pocket while you set up a machine shop with your buddies and spend your time racing out at El Mirage. This is, you've got to really scrabble to get these cars going. But we also see the beginnings. I mean, so the 1920s had a real speed parts industry, but it collapses in the Great Depression with everything else. Mm-hmm. But there's still a few hangers on, and then you get a bunch of revivals of the speed industry with new people doing things like Edelbrock is founded in like 38. And
yes,
people
and he had a gas station in like North Hollywood and was doing that on the side in his spare time after hours. Mm-hmm. Casting little parts and making, fuel blocks for multiple carburetors. He was doing some intakes and some heads, after hours, hand stamping them with his name.
And doing heads in those days sometimes, I don't know if Vic was into this, but sometimes involved taking stock heads and welding the chambers up and then kind of remachining them down for more compression. So I think part of what sets out the Gow Job era from this slightly later, what I think you and I defined as the hot iron era, is that you start to get aftermarket parts on the scene and you start to get more interest in the big gorilla in the room, which comes along in 32, which of course is the Ford Flathead V8, which is kind of a clinker right out the gate, but it sticks around and they refine it. And by 34, people are really interested in using it to go fast. Probably thanks in part to John Dillinger, right?
Not really Dillinger. Dillinger drove. It was mostly Barrow and a few others that did those. Clyde Barrow liked V8s because they were kind of an everyman's car and you could pick them everywhere else. Dillinger mostly had a lot of bigger, expensive cars, a lot of straight eights that were modified. Essex, Essex and Hudson cars and Terraplanes that were either 6-cylinder or straight eights that were highly modified. There was a garage, I think, in Chicago that specialized in modifying cars for guys doing that line of work.
Well, and Terraplane's interesting because it's the closest thing that you have to like a factory muscle car in that era. Like, yes, it's Hudson's Essex, but they work it over into sort of the light car, big engine formula. And especially in its like 1-2 years with a straight eight, it really makes a splash. And then in Britain, they base a whole sports car on it called a Railton. It's really just the chassis with like a Bentley style body, but it's got the big Hudson engine and makes a big impression. Yes. So I want to digress for a moment here because Jason Hill in the comments is trying to stoke division, which is probably the right thing to do. In no, this is an entirely too amicable.
Before you jump into that, Dave, I wanted to go back to his first comment about the latest acquisition, how far off it is from the two examples that we gave.
Oh, yeah.
I put the picture up for you.
Oh, yeah. And then I ignored it. Sorry. They all changed and I didn't notice. So
this wasn't right. This was not only going on in the US, this was going on around really much of the industrialized world, right, that had automobiles. So this is, my lovely wife's most recent acquisition. And
this is an Austin 7. Yes, which is the Model T for the rest of the world, even though they also got Model Ts, but this was their small, cheap car, which is even smaller and possibly cheaper than a Ford.
They're tiny. Much like the Ames or the Mercury Speedsters. So this is a recreation of a Gordon England Brooklyn Special. So this is a fabric-bodied special Gordon England built the bodies for these. He built fabric bodied saloons. He built a bunch of stuff to go on Austin 7 chassis. And so this is Gordon England was kind of the Mercury body or the Ames body of England for Austin 7s. So that's what this is. So it's really very similar.
Guy named Gordon England? Like, could I just call myself David America and start building hot rod bodies? Like,
I mean, if you wanted to,
or is it the Gordon Company of England as opposed to the Gordon Company of Scotland or something?
No. He was Gordon England.
Gordon England. Okay, well, guys, from now on, it's Dave America. So is that a fabric body, Derek? Is that like in the Wayman style where it's got like jointed metal?
Yes, it's a complete wood structure beneath and then stretched fabric. Padded, padding, light padding, and then stretched fabric.
And yes, that's a Brooklyn's windshield. To answer your question.
Yeah.
And
some
yes,
of them
that
are
is
square
Brooklyn's
topped and
windshield.
some of them are round topped, and that one's round topped. So does this have any lowering to the chassis speed parts on the engine, or is it simply an exercise in lightening and restyling at this point?
There's been some minor modification to the chassis. It does sit just, I think, a hair lower than the stock Austin 7s. And about the only thing done to the engine is it's got a dual carburetor, kind of a dual intake manifold setup on it for dual Zenith carburetors instead of the single. Beyond that, right now it is a stock Austin 7 engine. Beyond that, and basically a header type exhaust manifold that comes out into the exhaust.
No compression.
Correct, but there is an extra block and a whole bunch of extra parts because truly the Brooklyn specials like this, Gordon England had actually set some records in a few of these cars that he built, and he had built a pressurized engine for them. So he had actually hopped up an engine, a little better compression, fully pressurized it, and achieved speed records in like the 70, 75 mile an hour speed area. And so the full intent over the next few years is to build the second engine as a fully pressurized, as Gordon England would have built it, put it in the car to obtain better speeds with the car.
A 30s MG like Roots blower would wake that up.
Oh,
too.
Okay. That now, okay, maybe. Yeah, I thought you were going to say engine. I was like, no, we're not.
No.
I'm an Austin 7 engine.
So, okay. That leads well into what I want to wrap up with, because it has been almost an hour here, and yet we need to inject a little controversy at the end, and which is, Jason also asked, you guys that are into preservation, would you object to someone taking a good example of a 1920s or 30s car and doing this modification to a sportabout? Or is this something that should have been only done back in the day? Thoughts on this? We'll go with our guest first, because he, of course, built his car from junk and continues.
And he'll hack anything up
from part. Well, no, I mean, but he did not start with a nice 1927 Roadster. He started with a body that was shot full of holes and a frame that, $50 Model T frames are everywhere, and such. But I know a guy who was all prepared to take a nicely preserved 1920 Touring and do a lot of these modifications to it. So there's a range of answers to this.
Well, so the way I see it is that, like, nobody's saying that you can't do those things. I have a problem with, and I know it's, somebody else's car, somebody else's money, they can do what they want. All right. That's beside the point. If you're asking for an opinion, I would say, if somebody bought like a really nice restored, or even better, like an original unrestored, unmolested, it's been sitting in a garage for 80 years, the original paint, like say an early Packard, or like your, even better condition than your Peerless, Derek, or, any of those kind of cars in that condition, a 32 Ford three-window coupe, and you were going to build it into something and trash the original body, or chopped it and butchered it and cut it up into something like that. Yeah, okay, I'd have a problem with that. If you're going to start with a car that's, like somebody stole the body because They were going to build a hot rod project and they were going to scrap the chassis. And so it's the chassis minus the body with all the fenders, and you wanted to build a speedster out of it. Absolutely. It's the great way to get into the hobby, or you're starting with something that's been sitting out in the field for 50 years and you want to resurrect it and the original body is collapsed, all the woodwork's gone. Sure. Like that 27 Buick that I helped restore a few years ago, or preserve a few years ago, that was original paint, the original interior. It had only had one oil change, and since 1927. It was done in 1948 when my dad was born. And it was pretty much untouched. It still had the tires on it from the Depression and the war. No, I wouldn't cut that car up for that. There's a line in the sand that I would draw there.
I mean,
But
that's
are
a
there
pretty
plenty
broad
of good
line you've
candidates?
drawn, though, admittedly,
Absolutely.
right? I mean,
Huh?
it's a pretty broad line you've drawn there, admittedly. I mean, so what
Yeah.
about the guy that's got the 27 Buick and he goes, yeah, this is fine, but it would be a lot cooler if it had wire wheels on it, and a lot cooler if it had two carburetors that weren't Marvels, and maybe I milled the head a little bit for some compression. And at what point, I mean, is it still a period accessory kind of deal? I mean, a lot of this stuff is just bolting together, different combinations of parts, and not necessarily like torching stuff and cutting stuff and rewelding it.
Well, if it's for drivability, like if like Ewan's Buick, like the Buick that we did, that car, it's got wood spoke wheels on it. If I could have located him a set of hubs and a set of wire wheels from like a 28, well, absolutely, I'd have put him on there. I tried to talk him into doing it, just because it would have been way sharper on wire wheels than it would have on the wood spokes. Could you have done something better with carburation than the Marvel carburetor? The kid pouring gasoline into the carburetor with a boot? Sure, absolutely. They're finicky. They're very specific. So if you don't do them right, do they run right? It's debatable. Can you? This one did, sure. But if you wanted to set it up and do those things, and they were kind of bolt on, bolt off, you could reverse it if you wanted to. Absolutely. If you were going to take that car and take the body off and put it in the burn pile and put a gas tank and some bucket seats on it and build it into a speedster, yeah, we're probably going to have a problem.
How do you feel about it, Derek? You think Clayton has articulated moderation, or is he a madman? I mean, we know he's crazy.
That's kind of always been my kind of where I fall on it. It comes down to, for me, the level of rarity plays into it, right? I mean,
yeah.
Again, Model Ts are Model Ts. There's enough of those around. So long as it's not a rare, town car, one of the rare models of Model T.
Yeah.
Hey, if you find one out in the tree line and it's rough and somebody will sell it to you for $50, go have fun. If you find a Cunningham V8 chassis laying out in the tree line, and you can get it for $100 and there's no body and stuff, that at that point, then I think you got to stop and think about it. Okay, definitely don't modify it to where you can't reverse something that you've done.
Yeah.
Right. So don't go cutting the chassis up and shortening it and yada, yada, yada. But, if the body's gone and you don't have the money or the wherewithal to coach build the new body that was supposed to be on that Cunningham, then build a cool, fun little fabric bodied speedster on it and go rebuild it and rip that thing around, and then sell it to the big collector that is like, man, I got to have a Cunningham, and I got to have a Cunningham V8, and I want to put the proper body on it. Cool. I've preserved the chassis and engine and everything. I'll take my fabric body off of it.
Yeah.
Here you go. You can spend the money to get it, get it where it needs to be. So I think I'm kind of on the same line as Clayton, because, to me, it is about that kind of drawing that line and understanding where that line is, and bolt on, bolt off. Cool. Have fun. But, if you start really changing things on a rare vehicle or a well-preserved vehicle that should be saved for its historical significance,
Yeah.
that's crossing the line. And if you're hot rodding, like myself and a lot of my friends say, and I know you guys probably say it, there's plenty of fiberglass bodies that can be purchased. Don't go cut up a steel body. Like it just get yourself a fiberglass body and do what you want with it, and don't mess up a good steel body that somebody else could use for a restoration.
So here's a question to throw a wrench into that. It won't take long, but so my 08 Model S, it's 1908 Ford Model S. They didn't make very many of them. Fewer survive today. They're the pre-Model T, so it's very much T-like, but also very spindly and a lot more not as refined and more delicate than a T. My car there's a registry for them. So my car was built into, rebodied as a gunboat runabout, little low roadster, 2-seat little runabout in 1912, between 1912 and 1914. Wood body, very much like your Austin 7, where it's a wooden frame skinned in cotton batting and then in canvas, and then it was doped and painted. And he custom built his own little brass radiator, his own hood, uses the same Model S fenders, but they changed a lot of stuff and made it into their own car, and patented everything they did along the way. We can talk about this on another time, go into more detail on this car. But do you, and I was given the car, it's mostly preserved as it was built in those days. So the body is intact, all the canvas is intact, the windshield, I have the complete car's complete. And I'm going to restore it back to the way it was in 13, 14-ish when it was completed, because it's unique. It's a very neat little car. But at that term, because it's so rare, do you restore a car like that back to the way it was when it was built by Ford in 1908? Or do you restore it back to the way it was built in 1912 to 14 as a custom bodied car?
Well,
that's easy. That goes back to the custom body, because it's the moment in time that is important to that car. There are plenty of other S's out there that represent the factory Model S. I mean, they're out there. Yes, they're much rarer than a Model T, but they're out there. It's not the only one left in the world, right?
Yeah.
What you have, right? What you have is a story and is truly a one of a kind in the way it is. It's just like my Hupmobile. There's not really record of which ones had what body on them, but a good friend of mine that is a Hup collector, some of the things that he sees on the chassis of my Speedster lends to the idea that it may have been a coupe, which is extremely rare. The coupes are very rare. And he constantly is bugging us. So when you guys going to restore it back to the, back to and it's like, no, it's we have photos of this in the 1930s as a Speedster. It's not going back to anything but what it is. And it literally is only getting stabilized and brought back to running condition. And we're going to drive the snot out of it and have fun. Because that's what it was built to do after it had seen its usable life with whoever had it.
Well, it's very similar story to a car that a friend of mine owns here locally. It's a 1909 Pope Hartford. I think it's a Model G, the 4-cylinder, the smaller car. And his great-great-grandfather bought it new.
Wow.
In 1909. I think it was like $4,700 new in 1909. It was a very expensive car. And in 1915, 14 or 15, his grandfather, so the son of the original owner, modified it took the original touring body off and built a kind of Mercer-like Speedster racing body for it, and raced it in the teens, before and during World War I, on a dirt track used to dirt track race the thing, built patent leather fenders for it and the whole 9 yards. Well, that's how it's been ever since. And it's still unrestored, completely original to that variation of the car. He even knows where the original touring body is. It belongs to a guy. It's been sitting in the barn in the rafters since probably 1920 and hasn't moved, but it's the original body for that car. And now his daughter and granddaughter are learning how to drive it. So it's been through like 5 generations of the same family, and there's no way that he would ever put it back, but would still love to buy back the original touring body, because technically you could just unbolt the race car body and put the touring body back on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. I would try my hardest to get that touring car body back, have everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I just displayed that touring car body in the barn and had them side by, like, oh, perfect. That's awesome.
Just put it up.
So
it's the same, and the same thing with my house too.
Braden, I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm about to turn into a pumpkin, so I do need to force this to what I view as a premature conclusion. But it's been a lot of fun to have you on, and it's made the pain of
pleasure.
Absence slightly easier for us.
No, I'm so glad you guys asked me to join and let me kind of hack and jump in and take over and run away with and talk about early cars all night. It's been kind of a blast. I love commenting and watching the show, so it's nice to jump in and be a part of it and talk shop with you guys. So
excellent. Thanks very much. Derek,
all
you
right.
Want to lead us out?
As to say, with that, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. As I always like to say, if you guys enjoy the show, if you like the No Driving Gloves community, coming in here, every Thursday night, or the Thursday nights we do get this pumped out live, and then of course the audio versions. Give us a like, give us a share, follow us on social media, YouTube, all those places. You can always buy us a coffee. Don't forget, we like that. That helps support the show. And of course, as I always like to say, if you do want to see us grow and you want No Driving Gloves to become bigger and all that wonderful stuff, there's one thing you have to do, and I would hope that you would do that with tonight's show because it was so riveting. But you got to share the show, guys. Get it out there. Share it with your friends. Let them know what we're doing over here at No Driving Gloves. All right. And with all that being said, guys, I'm going to say goodnight. And you know what? Seeing John isn't here, just to honor John tonight, why don't I say it? Guys, get off your ass and go burn some gas. All right?
We are out of here.
All right.